Okay then, well, big hand for
You're power tripping. Man United are going to beat Arsenal 5-0 this weekend. Can I make an order for that? Yeah? Well, no one's going to listen to that shit. You can't do it. But that's exactly what they're doing to us. And what we're doing is we're going away as Arsene Wenger and the football team, consenting to the fact that we've lost the match. And that's exactly what they're doing to us. So what we've got to do is this, and this is why it's very important and why I wanted to come here today, because what happened at Tom's place was amazing, right? We've done the thing in Birkenhead, and when we did that years ago, that was basically because we'd been to Roger Hayes' case, and Roger Hayes and John Hurst and Justin Walker and all those guys, I was watching them in the court, I'm not claiming credit, but I was watching them in the court, and they were winning the arguments, but the judge was still ruling against them. Listen, let's just cut the shit out. Let's just arrest this clown, yeah? And well, what can we, because in them days, it was, because the judge was the law. To people then, they thought that he was the law. So I looked through Archbold, which is the only book worth looking through, in far as they're concerned, because all the rest is civil crap, right? And I found unlawful administration of your oath, contrary to Section 13 of the Statutory Declarations Act 1835. So I thought, wow, we've got them, because none of them can operate on their oath, none of them. And the reason none of them can operate on their oath, none of them in civil matters, is because it's all about public confidence. They know that they can't operate on their oath because their oath is under common law and is a civil dispute. But they're going to be a judge in that civil dispute. If me and Wesley had a row, and we said, look, we both know Tom, we've fallen out. Tom, tell you what, I'll take my paperwork, Wesley will take his paperwork, you make a decision, and because we trust you and think you're a decent geezer, we'll agree with that decision. We would have formed a court. And whatever that decision was, and if I didn't uphold my position, I'd be a dishonourable chap. But that's exactly what we do when we go to these civil courts. But unfortunately for us, they're working for the banks, they're working for the councils, they're working for the other side. So we've got no redress in there, we've got no remedy. Any lawyer that takes your case on, knowing that you're going to put these arguments together, he's basically taking your money off you, wants to be in funds. Oh, put me in funds, he's very interested. The moment he's in funds, the case gets lost, the case gets dropped. Because he knows the score, because if you ask any lawyer, I suggest anyone who gets a lawyer, first thing you say to him, are you an officer of the court? And he'll say yes. And say, right, are you working for me? Yes, which comes first? The first thing he'll say is, I'm an officer of the court first. And they can't undermine the court process. So, if you start asking about process and procedure, as Mr. Ebert does, they can't go there and start saying, because they'll say, oi, you're undermining the court process. The next thing you find is the SRA have closed him down, nicked all his customers, and he's out in the streets. That's exactly what's happening, right? Exactly what's happening. So what they do is they'll purport to put up a legal argument for you. Well, you don't need a legal argument. If the process and procedure's been broken, there's a procedural problem, there's a mechanical problem, and it can't exist. And maybe your lawyer will do it for you if you give him 200 grand, and you'll think, oh Christ, I'll take the heat then, yeah? And I'll go through the documentation. And I've said before, that's why major criminals, like John Palmer and Van Hoogstraten, they'll go to jail for like years and years and years, and after 2 years, they get out on some technicality, because they've given their lawyers, you go and take a back seat for 2 years, and we'll get you out on some technicality, on some breach of process. And I've actually been involved in breach of process in criminal law, and it wipes everything out. Because if A plus B plus C equals D, if you take out one of those letters, it doesn't add up. And so the criminal procedure has been breached and it all goes. In the civil courts, of course, that doesn't necessarily matter, because all they do is they make it up as they go along, like we say. Hopefully we've still got some remedy in the criminal courts, but who knows, they might be putting people in the drawers now, we don't know. And that's why I say to everybody, no matter what you do, if you go to a criminal case or if you go to a civil case, the first thing to do is get this, which is what we read out of Birkenhead when we arrested that judge. And I said to Roger, if you read that out, I will arrest the judge. And it's under Archbold, so it's the criminal pleadings and evidence, and it says this, and I'll read it out, and everybody, I always go to court and I always read this out before we begin, because all I'm doing is I'm laying the ground rules out. This is the ground rules, okay? You go to abusive process in the criminal pleadings and evidence, which is Archbold. You go to contempt of court and you come up with this, right? So I'll read it out to you, but I'll take it piece at a time. Right. The Attorney General versus the Times newspaper of 1974 outlines the various ways in which the due administration of justice might be prejudiced. This is in a criminal book now. Okay? And it's the first thing you come to. And this is what he said. The due administration of justice requires first that all citizens should have unhindered access to the constitutionally established courts of criminal or civil jurisdiction for the determination of disputes as to their legal rights and liabilities. Well, we could all probably laugh at that, couldn't we?
Indeed.
Okay, we could all laugh at that, okay?
This was Lord Diplock.
This is Lord Diplock. Okay? And Lord Diplock was a pretty heavy geezer. He's the one who had all the Irish locked up.
Yeah.
Okay? But he's given the fundaments. Okay? Secondly, and you can use this, secondly, that they should be able to rely upon obtaining in the courts the arbitrament of a tribunal which is free from bias against any party and whose decision will be based upon those facts only that have been proved in evidence adduced before it in accordance with the procedure adopting courts of law. Well, I'm going in there. Me and Linda have written witness statements because we didn't take a loan out. The bank don't even produce a witness. Nothing. It's a paper exercise. So that's a nonsense. And this is the most important of all. And thirdly, that once the dispute has been submitted to a court of law, they should be able to rely upon there being no usurpation by any other person of the function of the court to decide it according to law. Conduct which is calculated to prejudice any of these requirements or to undermine the public confidence that they will be observed is contempt of court. So what I'm saying to you is this, and use that every time, get it on the record. When you go in there, I go in there very often and I'll say, you're not a judge, this isn't a court. Well, basically, any clever barrister could go in and do that, because we know it now, because we've luckily got the internet, okay? But I mean, so we can all realise that. But he's not a judge, it's not a court. The reason he can be a judge is with our consent, and that's it, because we haven't caused harm, injury, loss, or fraud on contracts, right? So that's what the situation is. And they're the rules and regulations upon which the public have given their confidence. Hey, look, we know it's more sensible to drive down there 100 miles an hour, right? But that's a statute. Well, it's still sensible, isn't it? You know what I mean? Yeah? So we allow them to create rules and regulations, but they have to have our confidence. They have to. But without our confidence, they don't exist. So it's very important in Paul's case that people turn their back on the court. That's awesome. Yeah. Because it means that the public have lost confidence. And that's what myself and Mr. Ebert and that trying to do is we're getting these cases together and showing that you have got no confidence. So if you've got no confidence, you've got no court. Now, even if we said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to consent to you giving us a court today. Yes, I want to consent to it. The fact that they breached any of those points means that they're in contempt of it. So I'll arrest the judge. And that's exactly where I've gone with this before. You know, when I was going to Belfast, trying to help a businessman over there, you know, you're not a judge, this isn't a court. And it's a huge court over there with barristers running around and all the rest of it, because they didn't know who I was, which is great, you know. And I beg your pardon, you're not a judge, this isn't a court. I'll tell you what, this is the man in question, and he's a good citizen of this town. And if you want to give him a criminal record, you better be on your oath, and you better have a juror of his peers. So, are you on your oath? That's the second time I'm asking you. So, of course, they're all faffing around, they don't know what's going on. So I'll ask you the third time. And if you say you're on your oath, I'm going to arrest you. And of course, this really confuses them. What if I'm on my oath? You'll arrest me. Well, yeah, I will arrest you for unlawful administration of your oath, contrary to Section 30 of the Statutory Declarations Act. And if you're not on your oath, I will arrest you for impersonating a public official and perverting the course of justice, which you want. And this is when they leave the building on civil matters. And even in the Magistrates' Court, because it was the Northern Irish Tourist Board, and this is where we're getting scammed. The Northern Irish Tourist Board are taking a private criminal prosecution, like myself and Doherty are doing, right? You don't realise, you just think you're in the court. You're not in the court. As soon as everybody knows. I mean, I'm preaching the converted on this. We know that the council tax is all bullshit and all the rest of it, right? That's what they're doing. They're convening their own private courts, yeah? And that's exactly what they're doing. Well, if they're convening their own private, they're not courts. They're commercial enterprises, unlawful administrative hearings. And that's what they're doing. So I advise everybody to do that and get it on the record, because what we're trying to do now is this. Before, I was going, I've said this loads of times, I'll say it again, I was going to loads of court cases under common law, which is right, it is right, when everyone says, 3 months stuff, well, it's fundamentally right, but when you start going there and spouting algebras, the magistrates, nobody understands you, because the culture is inside these rooms now, that they don't know. They don't know the stuff. What the procedure is this. Imagine if half a dozen of us went to a desert island and there were some natives there and they were all rowing and that, and said, look, we're intelligent people, we can sort the situation out for you. Give us £2 and we'd set out a process and a procedure, and we'd perhaps put 6 boxes, and when you come into court you place in the first box, and then he comes and puts in the second and puts in the third, and it gets moved around, and we say, this is correct, and we've got licenses, ones we've printed ourselves, to do this stuff. The natives wouldn't know, but because it's all operating correctly and everybody seems to be very happy, and if they want to come and inspect the third box, lo and behold, in the third box, oh God, well I'm not going to question that, and they employ other lawyers who say, okay, we'll make sure that all the boxes are fulfilled and all the details are fulfilled. What's happened by complacency and austerity and just basically the culture is they've put this stuff, we don't need to do all this. Nobody ever argues, because nobody's ever got a decent lawyer. We'll just take it from box 1 to box 6. And the whole thing falls apart. When you go there, what they do is, and what Wesley was saying is correct, and we know this, the mainstream papers say about this, we know that Wonga were pretending that there were solicitors' letters going out.
Yeah.
Pretending. They were pretending, right? That's just, they won't say it's a fraud, they'll just say it's, well, this is what's been going on. What's happened is, and I'm saying this to you, and I wouldn't say it unless it was true, right? Because we're doing hundreds of cases all the time, right? What's happened is this, because of perhaps austerity, perhaps just because they're all criminals, who knows? All the major solicitors in the country have been given a court stamp, not a seal. It's just a stamp, it's just a round little thing. Because they know that 95% of people, once they get documents through the door that have got a stamp on, looks like they've gone through the court, they go, fuck that, I'll pay it. Right? So they pay it. Of course, the other 5%, which I know are all in this room, right, go down and finding out, not standing in the common law, but finding out, well, okay, we'll apply their own rules to them. And what Mr. Ebert said, go down and under 5.4.2, you put a written request to them. I require those documents within 48 hours. You're a public servant, comply. Then you get access to the file. When you go to the file, you find that nothing's in there. So what's happened is, the people have operated in a private capacity. Me and Tom have decided that we're going to rip all you off. So we've sent you all bills. You've all paid, half of you haven't paid. But what we're going to do is, we're going to say there's court cases. We're going to put stamps or whatever and pretending they're seals. And usually they'll put the stamp on part of the application form where it says seal. So when you see the stamp, that's where the seal should go, but they put a stamp and you think, well, it says seal underneath. Hey, listen, man, we're too busy getting on with our lives. We're not supposed to know this shit. We pay lawyers £400 an hour to do this for us, and they're not doing it. And that's what's been going on. And then when you actually get access to the file, you find out that was there a fee paid? Because there are 3 main components, right? Any one of us wants to set a civil action against anybody on anything. You have to go to the civil court, and you have to fill out an application / claim form. You fill out the application / claim form, and then the first thing it gets done is it gets court sealed to prove it's a court document. You then have to support that application / claim form with an affidavit or a statement of truth. And attached to that, there has to be a fee paid. Because if there's no fee paid, unless you've got a fee remission form, the process has never begun. They're the essential ingredients to starting off any civil process. It's not a criminal process, it's a civil process. So what all these lawyers have done, they've all been stamping these documents. People have been fooled into thinking it's gone through court, and then they thought, I'll tell you what we're doing. They think it's gone through the court, let's charge them for the court process. So they're charging you court fees. They're charging you everything. And of course, when you go and examine these documents, they're not there. And this is what's been going on. It's been going on for a long, long time. I mean, it's opened my eyes. I mean, massively. And that's why, when people say to me, what you should do, anyone tells me, or anyone tells you what you should do, fuck off. Right? What I'm doing is I'm on my own path and I'm learning my own way. hopefully with people who've got experience, right? Because we've got a lot of, and this is where a lot of problems lie, and this is why I came here, because after Tom's event, everybody got together. Just being there, even if you're a person who's, can't large it up like Wesley or me or whatever, right? You still know it's wrong, you still want to be there. And once you get there, you meet other people, you get that vibe off it, yeah? Like we used to do in the old clubbing days, when we used to take pills when I was young, right? You get that vibe off it, we understand each other, yeah? We know about this stuff, right? And going to these events is crucial.
Yes.
I'd rather go to one event, like Tom's event, than spend hours reading about equity. Equity. Well, equity is the conscience of the court. Well, that's really going on, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they've had £3 or £4 million worth of my property and said it's been sold for £500,000. Oh, we've got real equity going on. These things should work, but they don't work because they make it up as they go along. So the only redress I felt at any time, again, due to only through experience, not because I'm some sort of guru, because I ain't, right? It's just experience, right? And my experience told me the criminal courts. Because I've been found not guilty of the most ridiculous things in court when I've blatantly been guilty. Blatantly been guilty. We had a 13-mile police chase, the police one day, and 4 of us in the car, and they ultimately the police got beaten up at the end. There was 2 police officers out in the country by the Black Mountains, and one of the blokes got out of the car and kicked shit out of the police. Pardon my language. I got charged, allegedly. Well, no, he did. He got 4.5 years. I mean, they said I was the driver. And what I used to do when I was arrested years ago, I was a different human being 20 years ago. Yeah, well, it was me, but I recognised it was a different plan. And when I used to get arrested about 20 years ago, what I'd do is, the first thing I realised that they kept taking me for interview, and it was no common interview anyway. But when they came the one time back in, I thought, is there anything in law that says I have to leave this room and go in there? And they said, no. I said, well, I'll stay with them. You see, with the tape recorders in there, it's not my problem, sure. So they used to have to come in and do contemporaneous notes. And of course, I'm saying nothing anyway. So what the police did on this one occasion when we had this huge police chase, they said that there'd been a 30-mile police station and that I was the driver, and it was driving was disqualified, reckless driving, endangering life. And in fact, the guy in the back seat started weeing out the back window. And his name was Paul McCartney, believe it or not. So of course, when we hit the police station, they weren't swallowing that, but it was true. But he started weeing out the back window, and of course, the police had the windscreen wipers on, and I was trying to go for an area here where it's a radio black spot called the Black Mountains at Hay on White. And anyway, they're better drivers than me, and they're in the same car. So I just jammed the handbrake on and said, well, that's it, no. And they got us in the police station. In the police station in the morning, and this one's saying about process and procedure. In the morning, they come to the cell, open the hatch up, CID, so they wouldn't have an all police me. And they said, all right, Taylor, are you coming out for an interview? And I said, no, I won't bother, look, I'll stay in here. Oh, we thought you'd say that. And they gave me my charges. And of course, right, so they gave me my charges. Okay, so it's reckless driving, endangering life, refusing a breathalyzer, loads and loads of stuff. Ultimately, it goes to Crown Court, and of course, the guys in the car were all going to say at the time, I believe, because one of them, they were going to say that they refused to answer questions on the grounds they might incriminate themselves. So nobody would know who was driving the car. That was the way. And of course, you can do that. It's taking the fifth in America, but you can still do it here. You don't have to incriminate yourself in a criminal court. If you're going to incriminate yourself, the judge will warn you not to do that. But anyway, when it got to court, it fell apart. And the reason it fell apart was because, and I'm only using this example, I was a naughty boy, a quarter century ago really, was because when the police officers gave me the charge sheets through, they had typed a time on the charge sheet, obviously to charge me. When I got them, and of course then they asked me if I wanted an interview. When it went to the Crown Court, they said, what time has he offered an interview? And every man must be offered the opportunity to explain his actions. Because you might have a lawful excuse. That bloke was because he was raping a child. We've all got lawful excuse for any charge in law. Okay? And that's what they don't like, yeah? Jury notification. So of course, when he went to court, he got completely booted out. Not because they had witnesses, they had the whole lot, yeah? But because the procedure had been broke. So I knew that inside the criminal court, when I got involved in the civil stuff, I could see that these judges were just making up as they go along. No matter what's involved, they're just making it up. So, as far as I was concerned, these are criminal matters. They're criminal matters. And if there's a judge, you imagine, like with us, we never signed this loan up, we had nothing to do with it. You know, they said I took a loan out for 904 grand in April 2008. The last time I'd seen the bank manager in our diary was 2007, November. So I said, well, can you show me any manifestation of intention? Any phone calls, any diary dates, any letters? Obviously there's something. Oh no, there must be some sort of psychic loan. I walked in there, said give me 904 grand, paid off another loan, and had an extra 80 grand on top. Bullshit. But of course, when it comes to court in the civil realm, they're working for the banks, so they won't engage with it. And ultimately, when they won't engage with us, when they won't listen to us, when we're saying there's crime, when we're saying there's fraud, ultimately, they're just digging a hole for themselves. Because it's void ab initio. You will all know that, you know, I know I'm talking to the converger. It's void ab initio. Doesn't matter if another judge has made an order. Oh, you know, you'll get someone to make an order against you, and then they'll get a receiver, then they'll get a bankruptcy trustee against you, then they'll get and they fire everything into you. Like Tom's been having, MAPA is a criminal enterprise to try and put pressure on people who are at a place where they shouldn't be. So the water board, the electric board, all these bodies, they're supposed to be there to protect us, but they're being used to enforce these regulations and put you to the point where you go, oh Christ, there's too many bodies. It's like Agent Smith in The Matrix. You know, they all just keep multiplying, oh Christ. Well, luckily for us, to a certain extent, because perhaps I'm mentally ill, that's why Linda is my nurse, which is probably true after 29 years. But what we've done is we've collated information against each one of the parties. And then so the MAPA situation works against them. So ultimately it's the tide coming in. And oh God, we got a sandcastle, the tide's coming in, the tide's coming in. And then it goes back. Well, of course, the moment it goes back is the moment that we say, oh yeah, we've got crime against you, and you, and specify it, like Mr. Rupert says. Don't beat about the bush, because when you go to these, oh, well, the judges ruled this, the judges ruled that. And this is where they get you. What they do is they set the most hideous fraud against you, and then they'll get it in front of a compliant judge with whatever evidence, no evidence, nothing. That compliant judge will put a rubber stamp, not a seal, on it, fool you into believing, or fool most people into believing that that's a legitimate document. Then all of a sudden, everything before it falls away. Well, we got the judge's order. He wouldn't have made that order unless he was correct. Well, okay, no problem. We need to strike that out because there's been misleading, inaccurate and false information presented, which I can prove. Then all of a sudden we're in a place that they can't deal with. And this is where we are with it, yeah? So I'm not saying everybody, it's like we're all going through a jungle, right? And we're all chopping away at it with it. And there's no experts in this game. Not one of us is an expert. We're all pioneering. But the same thing applies to them.
Yes.
Because they've never come across this before. In fact, you know, the levelers or the Luddites, they've never come across this before. Never come across. But ultimately, all the civil process is based on, as I say, law diplot, public confidence. Not the criminal law. You know, you can't object to you've been caught stabbing someone. You can't sort of object to that and say, well, I'm not going to be in prison because I don't consent. Yeah? That's the whole situation with the magistrates' court. The magistrates' court, that summary examination for the crime. Now that summary examination is, if there's a mass murderer around here, Pete goes mental with a knife, right? And we all pin him down and he can't have a judge and jury in 5 minutes. So all we can do is we can get 3 people, 3 of his peers, untrained in law, i.e. magistrates, to say, look, we can hold him in custody for 7 days at a time. That's all we can do, yeah, pending his trial. And then of course, because he doesn't want to keep going back and forth to prison from prison, because it's a day of nonsense, you know, you're going from like women's clubs or something with your bags and all that, you're all right, I'll have a month fly down, yeah? Then you go to the crime. Same things with burglary. You can get 14 years in a crime court for burglary, 14 years. But they say to you, well, if you want the magistrates to deal with it, then they can deal with it, and they can only give you 6 months for each, it might be 12 times, but give you 6 months for each crime. Of course, people think, oh, stop that, I'll go for the magistrates. They can still send it to crime court if upon hearing the information they think that, but you've consented. You've consented to it, because the summary examination means nothing. Yeah, it's examination, that's all it is. And then like Veronica says, it takes 12 of us to find one of us guilty. 12 of us, that's what a jury's about. You could be as guilty as hell, but it'll take 12 of your peers to find you guilty. Yeah? And so that's the situation. That's how powerful we are as human beings, and that's how powerful each one of us is. Well, what we've done is we've given this authority under corporate stewards to these clown courts, which is what they are. They're clown courts, yeah? With these characters who believe that they're so arrogant they believe they can do whatever they want to us. We've not been addressing them because we haven't had the information. We've got the information now. We're all working together. And it doesn't matter what route you're going on. I've got a guy who's working with me at the moment, giving me information. He's going down the consumer protection route because he's got a business in France and England, and he's all about consumer protection. Well, I never even thought of consumer protection. Yeah? But when you look at it, people like the SRA can't advertise bodies and people if they're not correct, because it means that the consumer should be protected against it. So to me, it's a completely different way of looking at it. Yeah? So every one of us are getting information, and whatever we're doing is the way we should be doing it. Talk to people who've got experience. People start saying to you, oh, what you should do. They're usually people who've been on the keyboard too much, or who've got a guru sort of like thing about themselves. They want people to know what they're saying is right or whatever, right? Ultimately, experience is what counts on every single issue. So, you can, I'm saying to you this now, you can find out who's giving you wrong information and stuff. They do certain things. You've got a court case and it's going on in 2 weeks' time. All of a sudden you will get, and I'm not saying some people are just genuinely trying to help. Certain people might turn up, speak to you, give you information, and try and put you on another path. And of course, a drowning man grabs at every straw he can. So if you're in the river drowning, of course you're grabbing at everything. But you focus your attention on the people you trust and the experience that they've shown you. You've experienced it through them. And don't disfocus. Don't disfocus on what you're doing. Because that's the point, right? And that's where you start to pick the threads out of this. And you'll start to notice people become engaged with you on things that really and truthfully, anyone tells me that what I should be doing, I'm afraid. They're just not taking it on board, not listening to anybody. Plus, I'm not some, yeah, they're taking it on board, but what I should be doing, no, what I should be doing is what I'm doing. That's my path. Right? So I've said that to you because what I wanted to do, after Tom's event, people got together, right? And I've seen what's happened up in Bury, and I've seen what Wesley's been doing and that, right? And what Salon's been doing. It's brilliant because we're actually focusing and getting these things. This wouldn't have been possible a few years ago. Now we've got it, right? And we don't want to lose it. But what happens is, it dilutes once the event goes away. Not the paperwork, not none of that. It's the event. The events are very important because that's where we gain experience. And if I'm selling you products and you can get them products elsewhere, you tend to wander off elsewhere unless I've got a personal relationship with you. And we've got something that we can bind us and we can do together. And so all of this, and everyone here basically, I've met other events. And they're common law events. They're common sense events. That's what. So we go to the common sense perspective where, excuse me, there's 70 members of the public here stopping, or 300 in Tom's case, stopping this. And by the way, can you please give us your paperwork so we can have a look at it? It's not. Now this is where we get the power. Because the public, they might think, oh, you're all tinfoil hat wearers. You don't even know that, right? Once they've had a problem, you say, well, hey, I can prove it to you, man. Go down and under 542 and ask to inspect the file. Right? Because it won't be what they think it is. And everyone's now getting affected by this in one way or another. My mother gets bills off the N-Power now. She doesn't, she's paid the bill. It's all these scams. And once we start realising that this is our power, events are our power, their weakness is their paperwork. So, events are our power. If someone's getting, they can't understand, why would 300 people go to some geezer's gaff up in Nottingham and stop him getting evicted? Oh, the mainstream media says, oh, because he had cancer, and they must have all felt sympathetic. That's bollocks. Tom has had cancer, but that wasn't the reason we were there. We all knew the reason we were there, he knew the reason we were there.
Humanity.
But that's what they're trying to do. Well, why would people, the only reason people would go to a place is if they were paid. That's because you're dealing with fucking mercenaries. Sorry for language. Mercenaries, right? I've, as a younger man, hung around with mercenaries. Ex-SES blokes, I'm from Hereford. Foreign Legion guys, right? Mercenaries are wankers. They're wankers. If you're doing something for money, if you're doing something for that, you're doing it for that. That's why they can get aircraft carrier in the world, and some little Japanese guy on a fucking crop duster will come across the water, boom! Oh, we can't understand that, right? And that's what we've got. We've got it, you know, and we have got it now. We've got it in this country, and you know, my good friend Ben Gilroy, I used to be so jealous of what was going on in Ireland for years, because them guys put it to them, and they've been doing it for years. And, yeah, and I mean, he gave me a Skype the other night saying, you know, I was looking at this coming together, and I thought, oh God, you know, I never thought it was going to happen, you know, because I just never could see it. But it's here now. There's all this breaking, divide and conquer, you know. It's like the IRA, the real IRA, you know, the real response, the unreal response. Look, at the end of the day, we can all put our different things to bed. Again, but we've all got, the first page on our book is justice and fairness. Right? Don't matter where you go with it, you might believe this. Look, let's go back to page 1. Because page 1's where we all start from. Right? That's what we need. Right? So whenever we disagree or argue about points of law or case authorities, whatever, it's basically nonsense because they just make it up as they go along. Yeah? We go back to page 1, yeah? And that's exactly what and that's why I wanted to come to talk to people, because it's the glue that we need. And it is the events, and you know, I'd like to say, I want to be at an event at least every 6 weeks. Or, no, at least every 6 weeks, an event somewhere. Yeah? And look, I know it's expensive, but listen, we want to be on the right side of history. And this is what we're doing. We're going to be on the right side of history here, right? And that's what we are going to be doing, and that's what we are for, and that's why we're here, right? So that's my rant, right? What we've got, I mean, I presume, and I apologise to those who don't know about what's been going on with Bodmin Manor in my life and all that shit, you know, but I mean, but it'd be too long for me to explain if they don't know, right? But the bottom line is this: I've been taking out private criminal prosecutions for the last 2 or 3 years, and failed, examined the court process, gone through hours and hours in the court, just gone through it, and Michael Docherty has been doing it more successfully than me, because Michael Docherty is far more organised than I am, and you know, he's a clever cookie. But I'm more of a nuclear bomb. You know, he's more of a conventional weapon, and I'm more of a just the whole scene goes mad. So, but anyway, we have been getting them through, because ultimately we can compromise them. Because what's been happening in the civil court is the best you can get out of a civil court is stalemate. The best. And they'll say, oh, we'll reserve judgment. Oh, and that's the best you'll get. And then they'll go off, and then 6 weeks later or whatever, there is the judgment reserved for a week later, they'll come back and they'll knock you out of the game regardless. So the only way to address that is through the criminal acts. Now, the reason I say that, and the criminal acts could be stitched up, I mean, look, they could end up stitching up jaws, I don't know, but I'm saying to you, that's the only remedy I can see inside there, on this level. So, if the bank's defrauded you, you make a complaint. And when you make a complaint, you go, oh yes, we'll deal with that. It goes through the complaint process. 6 months later, you get a letter, oh, you've examined your correct complaint, it's got no merit. Right, so you then, look, financial ombudsman. Oh, we've examined your complaint, banging on. And now all of a sudden you've not just got 1 judgment against you, you've got 4. So you're supposed to fold at that point. So what I say is, if there's a criminal act, call it what it is. Not interested in your complaints, not interested in these gatekeeping claims. It's a crime and I want to deal with it. Now, we know when we go to the police, what do the police do?
Nothing.
Civil, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Even if it is criminal.
That's what they say.
Even if it is criminal.
So, and that's only a little thing. So what I decided to do, because everything to do with me and the police is, if I do anything, they arrest me on mass, you know, 70, 100 of them, right? If anyone does anything to me, that's perfectly all right.
Yeah.
I've had 3 vehicles stolen, and they would think, oh no, it's civil. Well, how can it be civil?
Our friend had his motorbike and they threw him out.
Well, a friend of ours had a motorbike stolen from the Bodmin Manor. So we went down there and started making a report out, and they were all keen to take it down. And then the moment he said, Guy Taylor's place, Bodmin Manor, they threw him out of the police station and said it was civil. So, you know, well, why is that? It's not because I'm clever, it's all it is we're examining their paperwork, because the streamers train me into that, right?
Question.
So question it. It's easy to question. You can use their own rules and regulations. I was going down the court and I was trying to file for years, a couple of years, what people call a commercial lien. Don't call it a commercial lien. It's a notarial instrument that has the ability to be a commercial lien. You don't call it, it's a defence mechanism, commercial lien, right? If you're going to mess with me, that's what you're going to get, yeah? It's a shield, it's not a sword. Unfortunately, people then took it on board, a lot of people, you know, that if I had two children and one of them called his car the office because he kept all his paperwork in it, and another one called his car his weapon, and then I had a phone call late at night saying that someone had been killed by one of my children, I'd be frightened to death if it was the guy who called it his weapon, because he's got intent, you know. So you don't call it. It's ultimately a shield. That's what the commercial lien aspect is. But you can kill someone with a shield. If we're in a battle and I lose my sword, you can batter someone to death with a shield. It's a defence mechanism first and foremost, and it's a notarial instrument. So when you get a notary to deal with that, you don't call it a commercial lien, because you're going to stab someone with this, you know, effectively. It's a notarial instrument. You call it an international document, and he's obligated to sign it as an international document. You know, so it's just got an aspect. It's also got an aspect of being rectangular, a piece of white paper with black writing. You know, it's got loads of aspects, and one of those aspects is that it's got a common law remedy in it for you if your allegations are unrebutted.
And a seal.
And a seal. It's got a judgment based on that if they don't respond. Yeah, and you can check that out through their own CPR. I think is it 3240 or 3420? I can't remember. So that's that situation. So what's happened with us now? A little bit more comedy in some ways. In April we were removed from Bodmin Manor, which my family bought. My dad bought it in 1985. Bought it for cash. We have no money on it.
Dad's still there.
Eh?
Your dad's still there.
My dad's still there, yeah. Well, and this is what I said to a court. I said that we're still in possession. And the other party went, I said, my family are in possession at this moment. And they went, I said, well, just buried them. So he's permanently possessed. And as we're all dead, as far as they're concerned, it makes no difference, does it, right? Okay? So, you know, that's the situation. Mark, yes, you're exactly right. So we had, back on September the 2nd, September the 1st, this guy, we got removed from the premises. So we had, they reckon 100 police and take it, well, probably like 60 or so. But 100 police come and take us away, they say. Yeah? So that's okay, so I always keep the paper cuttings, because when you go to prison, you'll always find that all the paper cuttings are in your file, and that means because that's the public information on you, whether it's true or not. Yeah? All the paper cuttings are in your file. So that's what the public perception of what the situation is about. So yeah, it's 100 people, 100 police officers. When they arrested me there for under the 2012 Legal Aid and Sentencing Act, clearly nonsense. When I got arrested, I then interrogated them eventually when they interviewed me, and I know that they got two lady police officers. One who I know from before isn't a really bright cookie. In fact, she's annoying actually. She's dealt with another case, and I knew she had an earpiece in, so she was getting fed information on what to say to me. But ultimately, I'm saying, right, okay. If they claim to own this property, then they can prove it. I can prove it. My old man's up there. They bought my old man as well. They bought, you know, is that what they've done?
And Frank.
Yeah. And Frank, yeah. So of course. Okay, well, luckily, again, thanks to Mr. Eber, we've had an internal email from the CPS, which should have been destroyed, and I've got it, a copy of it, which says, because of his case, what they require to prove ownership. You'll never have a court case about ownership. Never. It's possession. Ownership's never even called into question. Because they don't, the Crown thinks they own everything anyway, so why is anyone paying their mortgage? Right? But anyway, so when we went to court, and Tom and Shalon and everybody came, the whole point is, I was the defendant of that hearing, so I said, they haven't got no evidence, they can't prove ownership, I can. Right? So they're bringing false charges against me, which they've done previously. The CPS trying to grind me down and taking a case out for 2 years against me, based on a British Gas case, which ultimately, when I got to court, because they'd used a fraudulent document, I said to the Crown Prosecutor, that's a fraudulent document, if you use that against me, I'm going to arrest you in court. And basically, I'll tell the jury. And so they withdrew the charge at the last minute after 2 years, and I got awarded costs, which they still haven't paid. Of course, the same rules apply with what's going on in Bodmin Manor. They were just, so they tried to adjourn it till February next year, hoping that in the meantime, perhaps this geezer's going to sell it, or whatever, you know what I mean? But ultimately, they're going to try and boot it down the road as long as they can. They've done the same with Paula Campbell, they've done the same with Grace McCasker, and the other cases we've been working on. So the CPS are taking on cases based on no merit, no evidence, right? And dragging it out as long as they can to grind the other side down. So at this hearing I said that I would arrest the prosecutor, or I would charge them with perverting the course of justice, if that's what they do. So they said it was going to adjourn until February, so I believe I'm right in saying that I'll give them 60 days. I was prepared to give them 60 days to produce the documents that they needed to have proof of ownership. And those documents are these. Documentation to prove that James David Davis acquired the title legitimately in 2014. Now I know this from the CPS themselves. 2, the sale of transfer completion statement. The full land registry documents. 4, the title deed showing James David Davis's name. 5, evidence of who purchased the property or land from Guy Taylor. And 6, this is very important, or it might seem bizarre, but any documents to prove that the previous owners were evicted. Right? So that's what we've done, right? So the judge accepted that that's what they need, so that's what they've got to provide within. But he said not 60 days, 42 days. So, oh, great. So, I was fine, because I know they can't get them. And in fact, what we've done is I've already applied for the land registry and already got the documents, so I knew what they said. Right? So I know I'm playing on the safe wicket, so I got the original copies. When I went to court on Wednesday for taking private prosecution, and we all went, what they said was that at the end of it all, they allowed me the private prosecution against the bailiff, which I'll explain next. But what they said was that there's another matter. What's that? Well, the Crown Prosecution Service said they can't get the documents in time. Well, that's funny because I can't. Okay, but that's 'cause they can't. So I said, oh yeah, we're judging. And they wanted an ex parte hearing to have it adjourned. And he said, in all fairness, he said, but I said they couldn't do that. So I've arranged a hearing in Worcester Court next week. So that's what we did. We arranged it. So of course I know it's fantastic because I I'm going to object to it because they shouldn't have charged me if they haven't got the evidence. Never mind anything else. They have no prima facie case of him owning the property. So, but we'll deal with that when we come to it. So that's where that is. And obviously, if they can't
What
put
day is
up,
that guy?
pardon?
What day is it?
16.
16 in Worcester Magistrate. And what I do when I go for private prosecutions, I don't get a lot. I mean, I'm amazed by the support I get, and you know, like 60 people come from everywhere, and it's awesome because it puts them right on notice of what's going on, right? But with the private prosecutions, I like to do them reasonably quietly because I'm then the prosecutor, not the defendant. You know, if I'm defending an action, I feel that I need the public support, yeah, which is really important. And again, like pour the support there, turning the back on the court and that's what you need. Proving that the public have lost confidence in these characters and these claims. But when you're prosecuting it, you're doing it from a different angle. You're actually operating as a Crown prosecutor. Because every one of us is not only a policeman, we're a Crown prosecutor. But we don't go around policing. PACE actually applies to, we can actually apply PACE to anybody. It's for all of us. But we don't do it because we're too busy working. Or whatever. Yeah, and then prosecution, CPS, you know, we're all Crown prosecutors, but we don't do it because we expect them to do it. That's why they're paid for it. Yeah, that's right. And I mean, Michael Doctor's taken the Crown Prosecution Service to court for under the Monopolies Act, which is awesome because they take private prosecutions to try to dump them. So and that's another matter. It's awesome. So what we did there, we went to court last week, and of course, when I was informed that the bailiffs were at the manor with all these police, myself and Linda went up there, and we snuck up through the back way, which we did when we took the police. And of course, there was the old bill everywhere, bailiffs everywhere. And when we got there, I just said, can you give me the statutory instrument? Can you give me the statutory instrument? And that's what we got to say to him. Give me the statutory, don't converse them. Statutory instrument, please. And this little geezer came out of the port cabin. He was the head of the bailiffs, you know, with all his jack and all his mates, right? And gave me this worthless piece of paper, you know, which you know, I think you've seen on UK column whatever. The seal's upside down. It's come from Sheffield Court, but I've got a letter off Sheffield Court saying they've never issued it. They've done it off their own premium, same as what we've been talking about. Right? So I said to them, I said, this is a fraudulent instrument, and I said to the police officers, because there's like 60 or 70 in there, arrest this chap, right? And of course, he said, right, we're going to take you from the premises. So the bailiff, the head bailiff, who's the director of UK Evict, which if you look on all these warrants, you'll usually have, a majority of them will have Martin Lation or Michael Anderson, they're the directors of that company. They're actually putting their bollocks on the line, they're realising it. They've done it. They're putting liability on the line, but they don't realise it. They never thought they were going to get caught out. So they've had me removed from the premises, me and Linda. carried off, and I said, that's a fraudulent instrument. I said to the police, you're operating under that fraudulent instrument, and off we go. Well, now we've got the charge against him.
We told him we were going to prosecute. He laughed.
We told him to prosecute. And we'll see what we're going to do. I mean, you might be up here with your gang now, but we'll be back. So ultimately, at that point, I thought, there's no point taking any further. We'll take a common law action. Because once they've sold the property, all the things that were there beforehand fall away. All it is now is a completely different dispute. It's a dispute over property ownership. And so that's where I deliberately took it to that place to see what happened, really. So, of course, on Wednesday, there's the fire. So this is about the point. On Wednesday, the bailiff will remove me from there. Of course, if a bailiff lays hands on you, as Wesley and I was saying earlier, the first thing they come up with, and they're all fake but is a writ 66. And a writ 66 is a writ for possession. Now, they're supposed to come up and say, can you give us the keys? And if you don't say no, they're supposed to go back and go and get a writ 69, which means that they've got assistants to do it, yeah? Of course, it's a writ 66. So he wouldn't have even been allowed to do it, even if he had the right one, even if that had been a legitimate document, which they never are. So the whole point is, the moment they laid hands on me, that was an assault, because they didn't have no mitigating circumstances that they were doing it. You know, when you're acting in we're all human beings operating under, we all know the score, no harm, no injury, no loss, right? If we're operating in a commercial capacity, in an acting capacity, then if you're a policeman, if you're a bailiff, if you're a doctor, if you're a solicitor, you're acting, and you're in that acting role, you have to operate inside the boundaries afforded you by legislation. If you operate outside that the boundaries afforded you by legislation, you're acting in a private capacity. That means that you're then personally liable for what's going on. So what I've done with judges in Hereford now and in Worcester is I've contacted them and said, right, because they're not giving me nothing now. I don't get, since I met Mr. Reeve, I get nothing, right? So they don't give me court orders, or there's nothing, I get nothing at all. They don't give me, they absolutely ignore it. And myself and Linda went to the court 2 weeks ago and asked for a receipt stamp, and they wouldn't give me a receipt stamp. They wouldn't even give me a receipt stamp. So, well, why not? They said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We can give you a receipt stamp. If you give us, because what I normally do is take 2 documents down to your court, you stamp one and I'll stamp one, that's my record. Because they're a court of record under the County Courts Act 1984. Yep. So I give them their copy, but he said, well, she said, we can take the copy, we'll stamp it, and then we'll photocopy it, and we'll give you a copy. That means you're charging me for a receipt. So if I went to Tesco's, 85 quid worth of shopping in the trolley, he said, 85 quid, receipt? Oh no, I'll give you a receipt, but it's £5. That's what they said they would charge you a £5 for it. So that in itself is breaking the law. And of course, talking to the guy who's involved in consumer protection, I realised it falls under a different thing. Yeah, that's why it's great that we're all doing different work. So that's where we are with all that. So now what's happened is, next week I've got this court case whereby it's put up or shut up. They can prove the ownership of the manor of the cat. We know they can't because I've already got the documents that they claim they haven't got yet. Michael Anderson's got a summons, right? So this clown, this little prick who's been going around doing all this torturing people with the evictions, one of the two, Michael Anderson or Martin Lasham, you'll see their name on the majority of warrant, not all of them, but the majority of them, because they're 2 of the High Court Enforcement Officers, Limited, that have been doing all this torture to us, right? It's gone to his home, because I found out his home address. He lives down in the Mumbles in Saundersfoot. So it's gone to his home, and of course he's not British Gas, right? British Gas came there and they battled it with me. And basically, you tell British Gas in the court are like best of mates, right? But with him, it's going to be a different thing, because he's a private company and they can soon get another one, right? So that's going on. And of course, the moment that falls foul, then I'm just going to go back at Bodmin Manor and take it back again. Yeah, there
So of course the main piece of evidence in Nelson's case will be the authenticity of the writ.
That will then be introduced into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. This reverse engineered, because again, and this is another good piece, there's a couple of little good pieces on the top that we use here. Because what happens when you go to court, they try to say, well hang on, the council found you guilty of council tax, you didn't pay it, then it went to receivers, and then the receivers went to trustee, and you're saying all these people are criminals. Yes, I am, right? And in fact, there's a wonderful case called Granny from the Land Registry, Daily Mail. Check it out, because some granny who worked at the Land Registry, her, a conveyancing solicitor, and somebody who worked in the court, got together and decided that old people who were on their last legs, they were going to rob them. So you wouldn't think that these three separate bodies would ever be working together in that capacity. But that case, and I use that case, and I take that case and present it as evidence that, yeah, it is do you know something? Conspiracy does exist. I've been charged with 8 conspiracies in my life, yeah? I've never been found guilty of them. And conspiracy is the hardest charge in law to prove, but the easiest one to be charged with. So they'll say, and of course, it's all about patronisation, and this is what me and Mr. Ingram are talking about. There's a conspiracy going on. Well, no, it's just maybe bad apples there, and bad apple and not, and bad apple. But no, if there's a pattern, and a consistent pattern, it's called patronisation. And well, people in Liverpool do the same as people in Manchester. People in Nottingham do the same. Well, where do they get this information? Well, imagine if I was the oil in the works, I was the people giving you the wrong forms and doing all that, yeah? I'd be the thing that was oiling the works of that conspiracy, and it'd be conspiratorial by nature. So that's why we've got them on the criminal. No civil, no more. There's no civil, because they've not got our confidence. None of these crimes got our confidence. We know what's going on, and I mean, that's why it's good to speak to you guys, but we've got to glue it together. So go to events, right? Help each other, right? This is what, you know, I certainly will do, yeah, as much as I can, as I always do. But we need to glue it together, because there are people who feel battered and trodden, and they've not got the front to put it up. But when they go there, they feel empowered. They know they're not just lonely, because they're always hoping that, like David Faber, the chap who works for me, you know, he lost £600 million because they robbed him. Oh, he's a bitter, interested old geezer, didn't have the right, you know, didn't know what he's doing. And that's what they try doing, and that's what they try doing with all victims. They try putting the pressure back on you, and I mean, I know I've seen Mickey's videos and stuff. That's what they try doing. They put the pressure back on you, mate, and then, you know, they're not listening to the victims. Well, as a victim, I don't expect to be a police officer and a crime prosecutor, right? But I will be. And if other people are victims and they're not prepared to go that far, there are plenty of us that will do. And, you know, we're all together now. Let's keep it together. Let's keep the force going. Let's not dilute. Because it's easy, and then you start getting back on the internet, and he's told you that and that, and it dilutes the stuff. You know, I mean, when we did Birkenhead all them years ago, it created a concentrated thing. It really was powerful. But of course, we didn't move from them. We presumed that the authorities would say, I mean, that was the arrest thing was, you know, because I mean, Roger Hayes wanted to be here today. Roger, he's had cancer, and he's had a throat operation, and he's had radiation, but he was going to come here today. We'd have a private. His missus stopped him the last minute because they've got to go somewhere on Sunday. But every one of us work together. No matter if we're involved in different shit. Who cares if we all want the same first page, don't we? Justice is what we want, no?
It's all about. Yeah.
So that's what it's all about. So I've had my rant, I've had my bits and bobs, and if you need anything else, you know, I'm here and whatever. I'm going to